Welcome to the Shared Path. I'm Maggie Linton. Our next guest shares his path to the NFL and his best self. In 2019, R.K. Russell became the first active NFL player to come out as bisexual. He reveals his journey in his beautifully written memoir, The Yards Between Us, a memoir of life, love, and football. Welcome to the Shared Path, R.K.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, you had a very busy time in New York, didn't you?
Yes, yeah. Every time I go to the city, it's busy. It's busy. We do press, we do books. I'm recently into plays and musicals and shows. So my partner and I try to go to as many of those as possible. And we were able to go to the Tony Awards. So New York City has been good to me.
Yeah, very much so. It's a good place to play. My sister lived there for about 30 years. So, listen, I want to begin with your early life. You take us on a journey right from the very beginning of the book with the loss of your stepdad, Tim Thompson.
Yes.
Talk
Oh my
about that.
goodness. I mean, it's one of the early memories I have, just being so young, but also it being so visceral and in understanding kind of, or trying to understand, because I really don't think at that moment, being so young, I could, but trying to understand the fragility of life, the precious thing that is life, and how people are often leave us at unexpected times. And you know what that meant for me as a young boy, to lose a father and to lose kind of that representation, and to I wasn't going to get him back, and I was going to have to figure out kind of life in that absence. It's where I wanted to start. It's where I feel like my story really starts. It's where I feel like the veil of innocence is lifted a bit, and I'm starting to see myself in this world, and how I fit or don't fit in it. It's something that impacts me to this day. Um, and it's something that I think also, just as human beings, if you pick up this book and you're like, well, I'm not black, I'm not bisexual, I'm not really into sports, it starts with something that's very human. It starts with loss, something that unfortunately we all will, if not have already experienced. And it was important for me to start there.
And also a man who had so much impacted your life, as you called him, a man's man, the dog,
Mhm.
which he was named for. You also talk about the strength of your mom, realizing that she had to get out of Buffalo in order to continue her life and also offer you a different one, too.
Definitely. My mom, motherhood, I'm not a mother, I'm not a parent yet. But even just from this side of it, I can tell that it's hard work. Regardless of anything that's hard. You add in the fact that my mother had me when she was 20. I just remember my life as a 20-year-old, and I couldn't imagine having a kid then. And then raising me as a single parent. These are obstacles and huge challenges in a feat that is already a huge challenge in and of itself. But my mother was, and will continue to always be an incredible and phenomenal woman, a strong human being, and someone who, regardless of whether they deserve to take on a lot, can always overcome anything they put their mind to. So, I am so blessed and fortunate to have her in my life. I'm so fortunate that she's been my mother. Um, and I've learned so much from her, whether it be just from watching her journey, or from her actively just being a presence in my life. Excuse me.
Oh, that's okay. No problem. Let's talk about your readjusting in Texas, because that's really where you grew up and awakened to who you were, but also just finding friendships and, you know, the wanting to fit in, but not really sure how because you were really kind of shy as a young kid.
Yeah, definitely. I think, we talk about, the book opens up with kind of grief and this human experience, something we all go through. And then moving to Texas was the first time I felt othered. I think that's why it was kind of the next phase of the book, really, because, growing up in Buffalo, especially around family and being that young, I was around people that at the very least looked very similar to me. My family was black. We were in a black neighborhood. I was in predominantly black spaces. There was a bit of kind of the disconnect of me, just how I was perceived. But at the end of the day, everyone for the most part looked like me in that space. I come to Texas, and I'm instantly realizing that I am the minority, and not just visually, but I'm being kind of treated as such. People have their preconceived notions of what it means to be Black in this country, and I'm being seen through that lens instead of as who I am. Add on to that, yeah, being an introverted kid, and then just being in a new space. I did for a lot of the time kind of like struggle to even figure out where to start in making friends. But it's also where my love of football comes from. And my desire to play football and to play any sport came from a desire to just want to make friends and have fun. The other kids were playing and they looked like they had a good time, and I wanted to be included in that. So that was kind of the first gift of countless gifts that sports gave me.
And you also said you were usually the biggest kid
Yeah.
or one of the biggest kids too, which also put a different amount of pressure on you to, in a sense, kind of fit in, but you didn't know
Mhm.
where. But I want to go to when you said you found out about football and the day your mom surprised you, taking you to your first NFL game between the Cowboys and the Eagles. I'm a huge football fan. I'm a Kansas City Chief. I'll tell you that right now.
Love
But
it.
that game made such an impression on you
Oh
with
my,
the fried
yes.
chicken in the back.
The love, gotta love mom. She knows her son. Um, yeah, I mean, to go to a game, especially a Dallas Cowboys game, like was the hugest thing in the city at that time. I had just found my love for football on kind of like the high school level. I wasn't even really looking that far ahead in terms of NFL career or that even being an option for me. And I think my mother bringing me there and why it's so important, especially for young Black children, to go to these places and to have these experiences and to be welcomed in place. It's because it becomes real for you. I saw that the field was the same length as my field. It sounds crazy, but I'm like, this is the same 100 yards we play on. This is the same football. This is essentially the same game. I saw people that looked like me, much bigger than me, even as a big kid. These are grown men. But you start to see yourself in these spaces, and opportunities in your mind start to open up. So it was huge for me being there. It was also just one of love and care. My mom, like I said, single mom, working multiple jobs. Those tickets aren't cheap. She continued to sacrifice for me, and put me as her priority, which is such a blessing. But that game really changed my perspective of football. And I was like, oh, this then became a destination. It became a place where I was like, I can get here. I'm in the stands now, but one day I'm going to be on that field.
It narrowed your focus and
Mhm.
gave you a real place to go and to work toward.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to move ahead because we need to get to West Lafayette and
Yes.
Purdue because that also changed your life and where you met truly your best friend, Joe Gilliam.
Gosh, yes. I did not know where Purdue was before they came to
Are you
see
kidding?
me. No, I had no idea the recruiter came, and he asked me, and I just had to tell him no. I was like, I don't. I don't know. I was like, I know as a Texas kid, it's where Drew Brees went, and I know he's great and he's
Yeah.
successful. So like it already was having that positive connotation. But everything about Purdue was right, especially on paper. The education, which my mother was always an advocate for education. Like I said multiple times now, she's raised me by herself, but she also got a master's in that time of raising me. So education was always at the forefront. It was also a huge conference, the Big Ten. I got to play schools like Michigan, Ohio State, Wisconsin year in, year out, and showcase my ability against some of the top athletes in the country. But it wasn't until I got there and I met people like Joe that Purdue not only became a great place on paper, but became a safe haven for me in actuality and in real life. Joseph Gilliam, just a rundown on the man that he is, to me to this day. A young Black man that was super focused, a very wise and intelligent Black man, a young man who also a lot of the times helped raise his younger sisters and was a parent figure in their lives. Someone who's very religious at the time. Um, a great athlete, and then to be my best friend, someone who was very much still figuring a lot of those things out about themselves, was huge. He was a huge help to me just as a human. And I knew that at the end of the day, if I was with him and if I was going the same direction he was going, and if we were kind of doing life together, that I was going in the right direction. That I was going to end up in a good place, and that we were gonna be able to get through whatever life threw at us as brothers.
He was also the first person that you really were able to ask him, would you still be my friend if you
Mm,
knew that I was bisexual? And he answered yes, because
yeah.
he wanted, he cared about winning and being with people who were focused on being positive and moving forward in life.
Yeah, and I think that mindset is reflected in so many people around sport, whether we say it or not, whether they've been in those positions or not. Because we all know, regardless of whether we openly know, whether we publicly know, we all actually are in acquaintance with someone who's LGBTQ plus person in sport as well. And if they're good people to you, and they have been good people to you up to this far, that shouldn't change when they feel confident enough to divulge a part of themselves or to share that part of themselves with you. And Joe was a reflection of that. He showed me that, just because he was a part of all these groups that I thought, once again, on paper would be in opposition of me, that he is his own person, that he understands who I am as a human being, and that we can coexist because, one, we already have been for so long. And two, because, it's the only important thing is how you treat people. And in sport, how you effectively help your teammates. And that's what I had done then. That's why I continue to do. And he saw that.
And then the what's love got to do with it? There was still Trina and Whitney too along the way. Come on, let's talk about everything. This is a man who was
Yes.
exploring. You were, RK was
Yeah.
exploring life.
Oh my gosh, that's what I was told college was. It was like you can go and you get to figure yourself out, figure out what you want to do, who you are. And part of that was true. That college was the first time I also had any type of intimacy with another man, and kind of really found that attraction to men. It posed the question then: is my attraction to women in some way fake or false? Am I more attracted to one than the other? Does that matter? I all these questions popped up in college. But then I was kind of quickly redirected to discovering I had already claimed football. I had already claimed to be a football player. I had already embodied that identity. I had already decided at that point I wanted to go to the NFL, and that a lot of the discovery and the question and the journey kind of stopped there because it was like, you've chosen, and this is what it is. That was reaffirmed for me in 20, I believe 14 it was, when Michael Sam then came out and was drafted to the Rams. At that time they were the St. Louis Rams. um, for me at that point, also knowing that I wasn't straight, I was like, okay, well, let me see what happens with him. He was the SEC player of Defense Player of the Year, very successful in the collegiate level. He comes out, then he slips to the seventh round. Then he goes to preseason. He doesn't make a regular season team, just all of these
A
things.
practice
And
squad.
Michael,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, practice squad.
Yeah.
And then he was kind of used as kind of like the cautionary tale of what could happen if you come out, which is so unfortunate for him and for all of the athletes, myself included, that were watching him, because at the end of the day, he did a very courageous thing. And he had the talent and ability, and he got drafted. To this point, he's the only out player to ever get drafted, still to this day. And regardless of what happens beyond then, that moment should still be celebrated. It should not be used to ward off other LGBTQ plus athletes. But at that time, it was, and it did for me. So college, though I was trying to figure it all out, I was just kind of created a bunch of questions and then told I could not find those answers, or at least told myself that finding those answers would put my career in jeopardy.
I have to tell you, you beautifully share your insecurities. And that's the reason why I called it a beautiful memoir, because you are so honest. You're funny at times, the way you read people. And you put out the questions that even a straight person would put out. Do they like me? Am I being honest? I mean, you even talk a little bit about the thief in you, and how you overcame that. And, again, by not being, you may have been thrown off out of school at one point in high school.
Mm-hmm.
There were still people who believed in you and the direction that you were given. And your honesty was very refreshing.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I think beyond anything else, I wanted to be honest and genuine, because I think that's the only way to really connect with people. This is not a self-help book. I am not saying that I have the answers. I am not saying do this and you will get to this. I'm really just sharing the recollection of my life, the highs and the lows, the beautifully curated moments and the very messy, hidden, private moments. Because I think that's the only way you really connect with people. And at the end of the day, I ask questions in there that I don't answer because there are questions that I still ask to this day. Am I being genuine? Am I being true? Am I being it's healthy to ask yourself those questions because if you're not, then what are you doing? You're kind of just running through life colliding with people and things and not knowing how it's affecting you and how you're affecting them. So it was above all else, I wanted the memoir to be vulnerable, to be true and emotional and genuine, because that's, I think, when you create connection between people and hopefully empathy between human beings.
The NFL draft now is, of course, just exploded. It's a 3-day event and everything held in Kansas City most recently. But talk about that call from Jerry Jones and watching TV when they hadn't even announced it yet.
Oh my gosh, it's everything that they show you. Like when on the first day when they show the draft picks and their family and the call and they're on the phone and like it literally plays out just like that. The emotions of it are something that I cannot describe. Um, I attempt to in a book, but really to hear Jerry Jones in that thick country accent, saying my name and saying that the Dallas Cowboys, like my hometown team at that point, wanted me. Uh, it felt so gratifying and validating. Sometimes, I attribute it to some of the wrong validation as well, like the idea that I needed to keep myself a secret. To me, it validated that as well because I was like, see, I got drafted and I ain't tell nobody, so obviously this was a good thing. But no, I mean, to dedicate your life to something and for it to be reciprocated on the highest level, to be acknowledged on the highest level, is oh my god, yeah. I'm like, I can't even describe it. It feels life affirming, in and of a sense. And for me at that point, I should have also sought out life affirming things within myself and in other areas of my life. I'm looking back, I wish I would have, but I didn't. Um, but that moment when you put your dedicate your life to something, you achieve it. There's nothing that feels like that.
You said you weren't ready, but that's part of the growth process
Yeah.
that you also talk about. You also talk about how you did work through depression, but a lot of it was because of your writing, your
Hmm.
poetry, your needing to write down things. And that's just another way to get to the other side, to the good side.
Yeah, definitely. I come from um, a family of very emotional people, of very passionate people. And I think just also in our community, in the Black community, a lot of times that passion is turned into art, whether it be visual or audio or writing or self-expression in how we carry ourselves, how we dress, how we look, how we things like all of these things attribute to it. And my outlet was writing. It was poetry. It was to be able to talk about these very heavy topics in this private space, where it could just be me in the paper and my pen and just my thoughts, my emotions without fear of judgment. No one had to read the things I wrote if I didn't want them to. It felt very safe for me. And it was the first time I started asking myself the big questions like what are we doing, what is how does your life fit into this complex society, to this sport, to this game, and it's where I was got comfortable with at the end of the day, got comfortable with challenging the social norms, got comfortable with challenging my own idea of who I was or who I should have been. And it really, I would not, if I wasn't a writer, if I didn't have that calling, if I didn't make that step, I don't know if I would have ever came out. I don't know if I would be the person. I know I wouldn't be actually the person I am today. It was that huge for me and that fundamental for me.
I think that's what made your book ride so smoothly because you have been writing pretty much your whole life
Yeah,
as and expressing and being able to get into words and actually even announcing your bisexuality. It was through words, wasn't it?
yeah, definitely. I
And
wrote a
composing
personal
that, talk
essay.
about composing that piece that went out
Oh
and
my
how important
goodness.
it was.
Yes, the ESPN essay, my coming out essay, started honestly as a letter to friends. in family, to the people who, whether you knew or didn't know about my identity and my sexuality, to just let them know like I was planning on coming out, that I was planning on making that decision. It then evolved into the essay that is today through talking about my life experiences, taking a moment and really being able to claim my story as well, to not just come out, in like a tweet or a video, which were options early on. I was like, I could do this, but to really just take a moment to say something. Going back to writing, it has always been my most true form of communication, I feel, because it is something where I get to just kind of matriculate my own thoughts within myself and figure out what feels the most genuine to say in those moments in that page. It's a letter I can read to this day and stand by all of those things that I said and the ways that I was feeling. And hopefully that's something that other athletes, other people in general, whether you're a Black, bisexual, an athlete or not, can go back and be like, oh, okay, this is something I connect to, or this is something that feels real or genuine to me. And that coming out letter was the catalyst for the book. Even I that was what got me comfortable also with the idea of sharing my life, because at the end of the day, it was a great moment, but it was just a moment, and there were so many things that led up to that moment. There were so many things that happened thereafter, and I wanted to be able to give that space as well.
Well, you are a great communicator. And I went
Well, thank
online
you.
and looked at a few more places where you have been speaking. Of course, you speak so well. I remember growing up, people would say to my sister, because my mom and dad were both sticklers of speaking well. They say, "You talk like white people." No, I talk as I was
Same.
trained,
Yeah.
and that makes such a difference too. Makes you a good communicator, a strong advocate for education, and how
Mm.
important it is to be honest with yourself.
Amen.
All right, let's move on. You come out, you're feeling good, and then Corey walks into your life.
Oh
And
my God.
I have to tell you, when you started talking about that, it's like turned into a romance novel. And I loved it because that's when you know that that is a love that is strong and lasting. Talk
Yeah,
about Corey
definitely. Oh my goodness. I mean, I met him, I think
at a
actually
coffee
3 months
shop.
before. Yeah, at a coffee shop, actually 3 months before I decided to actually come out
Mhm.
publicly. And it was a moment in my life too where, we talk about, often I talk about kind of the divide between public life and private life. I've referenced it in this conversation as like being on paper and being actuality. On paper, I should have been miserable. I had just lost my best friend to cancer that year. I had just my football career was up in air. I had just got out of rehabbing an injury. I moved to LA, which I was hundreds of miles away from family. On paper, I was probably not doing so well, but in actuality, through just living my honest truth, through I meeting people and telling people, that I was bisexual and being honest about my identity, and meeting Corey, my partner, and feeling just love and joy. I was having some of the most joyous experiences I had ever had in my life. Um, I was like, I was playing at the height of my career in the game that I loved, and I wasn't experiencing this type of joy. It really put into perspective that as great as football was, it should always have been secondary to me and my own happiness, my own joy, and my own self respect. So he was really the catalyst for that shift in perspective. Also, just being an amazing partner to me, because normally we don't meet people at coffee shops and they tell you that they're going to come out on ESPN and it's going to be this thing. And he was probably like, I'm just still getting to know you. Like it's been a couple months. But he was just a great partner to me through that, and cared about me as a human being, not just as someone in relationship or in service to him in relationship, but as just a human being, regardless of you know our connection. He wanted the best for me, and he knew that coming out would be the start of that.
He gave you strength when you needed it the most.
Definitely, definitely, still does.
All right. We've only got a minute or so left. What do you want people to know, and what good thoughts, because you have great thoughts that you want to put out there for other people to know, not just about you, but in giving them strength to move forward with who they are?
Of course. I will say I'll speak both specifically to LGBTQ plus people of color, to LGBTQ to LGBTQ plus people of color, and men of color, that who you are is your strength and your beauty, your identity, and everything that makes you the multifaceted and phenomenal person that you are valid, are valued, and should be held as badges of honor, whether you shout them through the rooftops or whether people ask you, you talk about yourself with your head held high and your chest out. These are things that are beautiful parts of who you are and your identity and your experience to this world. You are the paint on this canvas of life, and without you, there would be no beauty in this world. I speak specifically to those people, and to speak to anyone who is not LGBTQ plus, who is not a person of color, who does not necessarily feel as though they are a part of these communities. I extend to you an olive branch of understanding, of a different perspective, of a human journey that is inherently human and connected to you through that, but is inherently different and unique, and that is okay. That you can have empathy for people unlike you, and that honestly, that is the energy and the joy of being a society of any type, of being a community of any type, is empathy for each other. That we all need each other. There are nearly 8 billion people in this world. We are not meant to go through this life alone. And we do not need to be exactly the same person to be allies to each other and to be friends and community to each other.
A lot more coming from you, teaming up with Gabrielle Union, who is one of the most
Yes.
beautiful women I've ever seen in my life.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Teaming up with her, there's lots more coming from you, isn't there?
Yes, The Art Between Us has been optioned and is being adapted into a comedy series with Sony Pictures as the studio, and Gabrielle Union co-executive producing, along with me, co-executive producing and co-writing. So busy man, but I think it's a great opportunity. I think we talk often about, or at least see on screen often, the LGBTQ plus journey being one of like trauma and hardship, and there's definitely that in my book. But I also want to lean in on the comedy. I want to lean in on the laughter, on the fun and the joy of it, and to have maybe these normally very like guarded defensive topics, and to disarm them, and to just be able to laugh and talk, and enjoy each other's experiences. To watch the LGBTQ plus experience isn't just to cringe and to be heartbroken and go through trauma. There's so much joy in it, and I want to share that with people. And I think this is the perfect medium for it. It was actually Gabrielle Union's idea to make it a comedy. And once Gabrielle Union explains something to you, it makes perfect sense. I'm like, this is amazing. And I can't wait to have The Art Between Us in this iteration.
All right. Well, listen, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much. Once again, many thanks to R.K. Russell. His memoir, The Yards Between Us, a memoir of life, love, and football, is available everywhere. More on his busy life on Twitter and Instagram at RK Relentless. Once again, RK Relentless. Until next time, seek peace, spread lots of love. I'm Maggie Linton.